Thank you all so much for joining us at the Future of Work panel discussion. This event is sponsored by Bellevue College's Center for Career Connections and the Rise Learning Institute. Thank you all so much for coming, and thanks to our fantastic panelists who will share some of their expertise and enthusiasm with you here today. Thanks to the staff of the Center for Career Connections for helping coordinate this fantastic event. And I want to give a special thanks and shout out to Fain and the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce, who held a fantastic Future of Work event themselves last summer and fall. And we wanted to bring some of that to our students as well, and to our alumni and the Bellevue College community. This event is the first, this panel discussion is the first of our Future of Work event series. So we'll have additional events coming up in spring quarter, so watch for notifications about that. And in just 2 weeks from today, we'll have another event that we're calling Superpowers in STEM, which is about women of color in STEM occupations and fields. Now, we picked this theme, the future of work, because it's a subject that many students and recent graduates feel justifiably anxious about. Just a little context about that. A recent study by the World Economic Forum found that today's college graduates are going to change careers more than 3 times. And counting promotions, they estimate that they'll have something like 17 different jobs. And of those jobs and careers, many of them have not yet even been invented. Here at the Rise Learning Institute and the Center for Career Connections, we accept the challenge of trying to get students ready for jobs that don't even exist yet. And we're going to ask the panelists to provide a little bit of advice on how you might do that. So we'll dig into that subject today. This event will primarily be a moderated conversation, but there'll be certainly lots of opportunities for you to ask questions as well. And you can do that using the Q&A feature on Teams here, and then we'll get those questions out to the panelists. Our moderator today will be Dr. Geeta Bangera. Dr. Bangera is, her background is in biology and in the life sciences. She has a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon and a doctorate from Washington State University. She is the founder of the undergraduate research program here at Bellevue College and the founding dean of the Rise Learning Institute. Recently, she was selected to head up additional units here at the college and a new division. So here at the Rise Learning Institute, we refer to Geeta as the super dean, and we're working on a cape for her. And I'm Michael Reese. I'm the interim director for the Center for Career Connections at Bellevue College. And if Geeta knew that I was going to refer to a cape, she probably wouldn't have let me introduce her. I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. We've asked each panelist to open the event by making an opening statement, both letting us know a little bit about themselves and where they work, but also providing us a little bit of insight on what they see coming in the future of work. So this could be an under the radar trend that they wanted to share, or maybe something that's happening now that could accelerate even a little bit further in the future. And we're going to start with the home team, Bellevue College's own Al Lewis. Al, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you see coming in the future of work?
Sure. My name is Albert Lewis, and I serve as the Vice President of Economic and Workforce Development at Bellevue College, where I provide broad leadership for our Prof Tech programs, as well as oversee continuing education. My background is I've had three careers. I started in the advertising business and then transitioned into entrepreneurship, where I was a newspaper publisher for a number of years. And my current career, which is my third career, is higher education, which I literally stumbled into. So Michael, I resemble some of the people you talked about having 17 jobs. I think I might have been ahead of my time. I'm a first generation college student. When I came to college, I knew nothing about college. All I knew was that I was going to get a chance to sleep in a bed by myself, because growing up being the oldest of 9 children, I always slept with my little brother growing up. So it was just nice to get my own single bed in college. So as I think about learning and I think about college education and the future of work, I just like to give this quote. It really sticks with me. It's by Alvin Toffler. He's a futurist. And this quote, I think, really resonates with me because I've kind of lived my life like this. And I really believe that as people move into the future, this is going to be a critical skill. And the quote is, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And the reason that's so dear to me is when you think about what you just said, Michael, in terms of being able to change careers, get promotions, you have to kind of let go of where you've been in order to embrace where you're going. And that is a skill in and of itself. So with that, I'll yield the mic at this time. Thank you.
Cool. And Jennifer, would you like to say a little bit about yourself and about what you see coming in the future of work?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I am Jennifer Graves. I'm the Vice President for Quality and Safety and also the Regional Chief Nursing Executive for Kaiser Permanente, Washington. And Kaiser Permanente is an integrated health system that has both care and coverage across the state as well as in 7 other regions across the country. I am a nurse by background, and within nursing, I've been able to do lots of things, none of which was anticipated right when I graduated from my bachelor's program, but I practiced for about 20 years as a nurse practitioner. My specialty is in pulmonary and critical care medicine. Also have spent a lot of time in the education world, was on faculty at Seattle Pacific for many years and helped found the nursing program at Northwest University. And then the later part of my career has been focused on leadership and hospital and health system administration, most recently with a focus on quality and safety. And I also wanted to acknowledge, with my nursing background, and here we are kind of at the last few days of Black History Month. And so one of the commitments I've had has been looking at strong Black women in our history. And so today's reflection was about Harriet Tubman, interestingly enough, and a lot of people know Harriet Tubman as kind of the fearless conductor of the Underground Railroad. And what many people do not know about Harriet Tubman is that she was also a nurse in the Civil War and had a really amazing impact on the practice of nursing and trying to integrate Black nurses into military nursing and a strong focus on improving patient outcomes. So I think about people who have inspired me from the history and how we use kind of that fearlessness in Harriet Tubman to move forward through healthcare in the time of COVID. That's just been a personal reflection today. I would say as I look to the future, and particularly what we've all experienced this last 13 months or so in a pandemic is, I think as I look towards healthcare, the importance of data literacy is really going to be critical as we move forward. There's a statistic that's a little bit startling in healthcare, and that is from the time that research shows that we need to make a change in our practice, and this is healthcare wide, so physicians, other teams, nursing, et cetera, it takes an average of 17 years to have that practice fully implemented. So if you think about that translation from research into practice, that's a monumentally long time. And I think about the importance of data and making quick and rapid change in healthcare. And we've really been, I think, turned on our turned on our toes this last year with the pandemic and being much more comfortable in using data as it presents to us daily and weekly and monthly. And what does that mean for our practices? And so as I look for our future, I think data literacy in healthcare is going to be absolutely imperative, and appreciate being invited to share some other thoughts with you later today on the panel. Thank you.
Cool. And our third panelist today is Joe Fain. Joe, would you like to say a few words about what you see coming in the future?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's great to be with you. Hopefully you're able to hear me. I'm Joe Fain. I'm the president and CEO of the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce. Prior to that, I did 2 terms in the Washington State Senate and have worked in public and private sector for some time, and also was a community college adjunct for teaching intro to government, which was probably the most fun job of all the jobs I've ever had. That was the one I enjoyed the most. So, there's going to be a host of advice flying at you today about how to future-proof yourself. And I think the best opening advice I can give is just realize you can't future-proof yourself now. All you can do is have a internal culture that keeps your skills current, that stays up to date with things that matter, and it adopts a philosophy of lifelong learning. And I know our traditional and historic education systems have been, not to be cynical, but there've been a lot of box checking. Did I get my high school diploma? Did I get my AA? Did I get my BA? It's been less about about acquiring knowledge and skills and more about showing that you've got the diploma on the wall. And that was a system that was in some cases designed to separate in the minds of employers, in some cases, separate those that have gone through the rite of passage and those that hadn't. And it wasn't always about the skills that those individuals picked up in those institutions, but just the fact that they jumped through those hoops and therefore were deemed worthy. The economy doesn't have the luxury of that anymore because people need to hire folks that have skills. And so if you adopt that curiosity and that willingness to, go back and brush up on skills throughout your career and throughout your life, and don't view it as failure that you have to go back and get more information, but rather view it as a tremendous opportunity to better yourself. I think that right there is probably the best advice I can give. That, and don't freak out. This is, it's tough to think of all the folks that are prognosticating about what the future holds and, oh my gosh, the pandemic will kill us all, or AI will replace every single human worker, and robots will take over the world, and so on and so forth. Every generation faces challenges that seem absolutely insurmountable when they're in the middle of it, yet we have a fairly good track record of getting through it to the other side. So I know we're going to talk a little bit more later on about some of the other things that make sense for folks to embrace in order to be ready for the future of work. And so I'm just excited to be part of this conversation today. So thanks for having me.
Cool. Thanks, Joe. Our fourth panelist is somebody who thinks about the future of work and the future of the workforce for a living. Annalise?
Thank you. My name is Annalise Vance Sherman. I'm a regional economist with the Employment Security Department. Just a little bit of context about what that has meant, especially in this last year. So I work for the Employment Security Department. This year, everybody has heard about the Employment Security Department because we are responsible for unemployment insurance and everything related to unemployment insurance this year. So that's really where a lot of our efforts have been. I thought I appreciated Jennifer's comment about data literacy, and this year has been an interesting one because there has been such a need for data, and there's been such an absence of some of the data that we need. And so it's been a really innovative year in terms of just trying to figure out new ways to think about the data, new ways to use it in order to address some of the crises that are happening in very real time. So the role I play within ESD is to be looking at these numbers, to be interpreting them, to understand what's going on with the labor market, with different trends of whether it's the labor force or different industries and wages, and be able to communicate that to partners in the workforce and economic development systems throughout Washington State. My background is in economic geography. I have my master's in economics and my PhD in economic geography from the University of Buffalo, and I spent a little bit of time working at Western Washington University before the economy tanked with the Great Recession, when I fell out of higher education and into a different role that I had never expected. And I think that's, to the point of future-proofing yourself, a lot of it is really about having that flexibility and the ability to be able to move with where the economy takes you. Sometimes plans don't work out the way that you think they will, but sometimes they work out even better than you might expect or have planned. So, I guess that's my advice. When I'm thinking about what's been happening this year and where work is going to be moving forward, as an economist, we always see an acceleration into the adoption of technology after recessions. Any given recession, we see this acceleration. And I don't expect it to be any different this time, except greater than what we've seen in previous recessions. And it's the reason that I expect this to be the case is that not only do we have that tug between, do you invest in workers? Do you invest in technology? And what does that balance look like? Now you've got the overlay of a pandemic and the overlay that comes with health concerns for the workforce as well as customers. And so and we're also changing some of the ways that we do things with technology. So this is not to say that technology is going to swoop in and take all of our jobs, but to point out that we are in a moment in history that will introduce new ways of doing things and that we need to have some flexibility in order to ride that wave.
Cool, thank you. All right, and last but certainly not least, we a longtime ally of the college, someone who served on a couple of different advisory boards for BC and hired more than a few BC students and alumni, Emil Riccardi. Emil?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for the invite. I'm super excited to be here with this group. My name is Emil Riccardi. I work at Expedia. I'm a vice president of product and technology. Just a little bit about my background. I started in product development working on a Y2K project, and that's been a while. So if you're not sure, you can send Michael a message and ask him what Y2K is. But it's been a little while. And back then I was working at a wireless telecom locally here in Bellevue, remediating the billing system for Y2K because we wanted to make sure people still paid their bills when that rolled around. But while I was working there, I always had a passion for travel, and after being there a number of years, I had an opportunity to go work at Expedia, and for me that was kind of the dream job. You can do technology in a lot of different places, but I think you have to find something that you love, and I've always loved experiencing new cultures, learning about new people and traveling. So for me, this was kind of a great thing, and now 15 years later, I'm still there. Just as excited about travel as when I started 15 years ago. But now, as I'm there, our mission is really around powering travel for everyone, everywhere. And, what does that mean? We really want to help people go places because we think that there's a force for good that travel is. And so for me, that's kind of what's driven me over the last couple of years. My role right now, I work on a team that supports our supply partners. And so what that means is we build tools and capabilities for our supply partners to enable them to help be competitive in the Expedia ecosystem. So we want to help them get bookings, get travelers, help them market their properties and get out there. And so I'm pretty excited about what we do. It's a great place to be. But when I was thinking, listening to everyone else on this panel so far, I can see some common themes here that we're going to talk a lot about today. some questions that I wrote down, some answers I thought about around, growth mindset, continuous learning, bringing value in whatever you do. So I'm excited about the questions we have. But when I was thinking about the one claim for me to think about just immediately in our industry, when I think about technology, the big thing that we're hearing a lot about, obviously, is this whole work from home. And there's a lot of companies that have come out with very bold statements saying everyone's going to be there all the time, and that's the end of it. My claim is I don't think the office is quite dead yet. Much has been talked about this, but Expedia as a company, and even my team personally, we have 9 offices on 5 continents just for my team, and that's not Expedia overall. So we're used to having this global workforce, dealing with time zones, dealing with Zoom meetings. It's nothing new for us. I think we had to change a little bit and improve on how we did it when everyone's all of a sudden doing it. But I can't tell you how many people I've talked to in the last 2-3 months who are eager and anxious to get back into the office. People want to see people. They want to collaborate in person. They feel like it's important. And having that idea of a home base or some place where you can go to and actually work is important. So I think we're still going to see that. What will change is the flexibility that people are going to have. And you're seeing this now over the pandemic, which was, there was this idea, we talked about something that's called bleisure, right? And it's the idea of someone takes a business trip and then they tack on a few days for their own personal trip. Well, during the pandemic, you saw more of this where people were actually renting homes in different places and quote unquote working from there, but they were kind of on vacation. And so you're seeing this blurring of the work-life line and what that means. And I think it's good in the sense that people are getting better now at saying, well, okay, I know what the line is and I can do these things, but you're still going to have the office for some number of people. So I'm excited about that. I think it's a good thing. And humans are personal people, right? Like we need to talk to people, we need to see them, we need to shake their hand or eat lunch with them. So I think that's not going to go away.
Cool. Thanks, Emil. I, for one, am delighted to hear that the office may not be completely dead, because I was a little worried that the future of work might be in my basement, because that's where the present of work is, and I'm kind of tired of it. So without further ado, I will turn things over to Dr. Geeta Bangera to facilitate this conversation and dig into some of these issues a little more deeply. And don't forget, attendees, if you want to put in questions for our panelists into the Q&A, feel free to do that as well. Geeta?
Thank you, Michael. Michael, if you get me a cape, I'm getting you a cape for doing 2 directors' jobs.
No capes.
So we'll have battling capes. So I want to thank all the panelists. I just wrote down just such great things already. Learn, unlearn, and relearn. Don't freak out. I thought that was great advice. Data literacy, flexibility, doing technology in an area you love. Every company is a technology company now. So knowing where to apply that is great. So we wanted to ask you some very specific questions. I have the names of the people that we would like to tackle those questions, but everybody else feel free to jump in if you have some burning thoughts on that issue. So you talked very generally about some of the skills that need to be learned, but when we think about the future of work, what human or digital skills do you see that are going to maintain their importance from today till a decade from now? And are there particular skills that you think will be more in demand, let's say a decade from now or 5 to 15 years from now, than they are valued right now? The question, is for Joe, Jennifer, or Emil, but feel free anybody else to jump in.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. It's a great question, and I'll start by just answering it by saying, don't try to be a robot. And what I mean by that is, robots are going to be better at doing things that robots do than you will ever be. So if there are jobs right now that you think in the back of your mind, you know what, this seems like something that's going to be automated. This seems like something that AI really might be taking over. Think about what other skill sets you need to bolster so that that's not something that gets moved away. The reality is that the skills that will be in demand, that are really in demand right now, are the same skills that will be really in demand in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years. And that is relationship building, developing robots are not going to be your clients. They're not going to be your customers. The human beings are going to be those folks, human beings with real needs, with real problems that need laymen to be able to translate complex issues that they're facing so that you can help solve their problems. It's not really good work for robots. So understanding relationships, building your own social network, and a real network. I'm not certain. I probably agree that the office is dead, but I'm pretty sure that the handshake is dead. So, but developing those personal relationships is so valuable. So seek out every opportunity that you can. It just as a shameless plug here at the Chamber, we're launching a number of professional development things, a partnership with Bellevue College on internships, a partnership with the University of Washington on a professional development program, our own young executives program, really just about networking, skill development, and understanding the community that you live in. Those will never be done by robots, and they will always be in demand. The other one is writing well. A lot, this is a tough one because it's very clear that the press towards STEM has let some of the humanities slip aside, and the humanities and STEM go so hand in hand when they're at their best. Fortunately, I'm just hiring someone actually this week. The reason I hired her, she's a great writer. That's a key skill set because communications are so vital. And then finally, we talked about lifelong learning and staying current with your skills. Right now, I'm 40 years old, so I'm in that generation that, didn't have a phone in my pocket when I was growing up, but by the time I was in late high school, I did. And then Facebook later in, college. So not quite a digital native, but certainly coming up in that environment. And I think I've done a pretty good job of staying current, but I have a lot of friends in my peer group who, and I'm not suggesting that TikTok is the thing they need to stay current with, but there are a host of technologies and devices that would be very easy, and platforms and software applications. It'd be very easy to just not want to learn them because I aged out of having to learn those kind of things. Super valuable to make sure that you're staying current on your skills, particularly when it comes to digital literacy.
Yeah, this is Jennifer. I'm happy to jump in, although Joe disclosed his age and I am unwilling to do so, except to say I'm a heck of a lot older than you are, Joe. So there we go. I'm thinking of some of the same things that you talked about as far as A, don't be a robot, and B, the ability to communicate clearly, both writing and in person, as very, very important. If I think about healthcare specifically, the landscape of healthcare has really changed over the last 13 months. And we have gone from delivering most of our care in person to delivering care, what we call a digital front door for most people. During the height of the pandemic, early on, we actually were delivering about 90% of our primary care and 60% of our specialty services through some type of technology. So whether that was a care chat and using texting, or it was using video or telephonic type of interactions, that digital front door is going to be really what our main way of interacting with people moving forward. So this is a little bit of a healthcare specific twist here. To expand on the concept of communication and building relationships, I think also building partnerships, formal partnerships outside of maybe traditional partnerships. In healthcare, we've been pretty focused on, do we partner with other folks in healthcare? And I think, again, through the pandemic, we have learned really, really important lessons about the importance of public-private partnerships or private-private partnerships, and bringing other non-traditional skills to the table. And so for future, being able to embrace companies like in healthcare, looking at Starbucks, who's really now looking and working with us at our mass vaccination sites and helping us look at throughput and efficiency, and how do we actually lay out our mass vaccination sites to be the most safe and the most the best experience that we can, but also using those tools for the best throughput ever. We know that we're working with Expedia, as with Emil here, is helping us at the state level with some public-private partnerships. So those are several examples. Amazon has been able to give their space to us in the South County for mass vaccination sites. And so normally we wouldn't be looking at these types of partnerships, but I think it's really made me think of healthcare beyond our typical four walls, and how do we use everybody's skills to actually broaden that concept of healthcare and wellness, I think are going to serve us well into the future, and to be able to think like that and be creative. That creativity, I think, is also been something that has been revealed through the pandemic, particularly if I think about Bellevue College and nursing and the other health professions, what it means to be a disruptor. And by being a disruptor, I mean, someone that is able to be comfortable with innovation and make radical change. And that is what we need to be much more comfortable doing. And that flexibility that has been alluded to earlier, I think, is going to be very, very important. As we talked about, many of the jobs of the future are not yet even conceived today. So being able to embrace change and work in the future. And then I think I'd end with the whole concept of systems thinking. I think many times we've looked at the workforce or the work that we do, or our individual profession, perhaps as a little bit more of we've been a little bit myopic, and I would say and challenge us to be thinking about what does systems thinking and systems theory tell us about health and wellness, and being able to think of our healthcare outside of both the hospital setting and even in the digital setting, but really looking at things with a lens of most of our interactions, if they do happen in person, or in an ambulatory care setting, or maybe happening in the public health setting, and how do we bring care to the people that need it effectively and in an equitable fashion. So I think also having that equity lens that is a little bit different than we have had in the past on we could have the same intervention for many different patients, but if someone does not have somebody might have a different circumstance because of socioeconomic differences or disability, or be challenged by other race and ethnicity issues that may affect chronic conditions in particular. We need to be able to approach that, again, looking at data and being able to make changes that meet that patient where they are, and that person with their unique set of circumstances and their unique characteristics. So happy to end on that right now, but those are some of the things that I think will help make us successful in the future.
And I'll just follow on both what Jennifer and Joe said. I think I had a lot of ideas similarly, but back to the relationship building, I'd called it the soft skills, right? The communication, negotiation, listening. And for me, it's very easy to look at it stereotypical engineering world where you've got someone who just wants to come in and write code and not talk to anybody and do their job. And that's not acceptable, right? I mean, I think we want people that are engaged and understanding a bigger picture, right? And that includes, the great communications, written, spoken, whatever it might be. So for us, we've really seen that change over the years, and I think that's going to continue to evolve. When you think about that, you also want people that not just can communicate and understand, but you want them to have that big picture of the business, right? So if they're working on a part of the business, it's probably pretty finite as far as the impact they're making, but they should understand more about, not just the mission and the purpose, but why are you doing this? What does it mean? What is the business model? How does this work for me? And so, people need to understand more and be able to question and contribute, right? We don't want to just have people show up and do what they're told. You need to be adding value, and asking those questions are going to help you understand why this is important. So, overall, I think for me, the expectation is that people have a kind of a generalist knowledge around the business and how they can contribute. And also, we talked about the growth mindset, but we encourage folks on our team to rotate between different teams, because they get different experiences and they work in different domain areas, different technology. We've had people that go out of technology and rotate for a couple months and do something in, a totally different world. And then they come back with different ideas and different things. So I love the idea. I think Joe's saying do something that a robot can't do. Those are the things that are very difficult for a robot to do, right? Learning, understanding more, and adding that value. But you have to be flexible. I think we're gonna hear the word flexible a lot more today. But it's really important to understand that. So for me, like I said, I think those soft skills and kind of that big picture is what people care about. And that's why I've stayed where I've been for 15 years. I think we've been talking. What'd you say, Michael? People have 17 to 19 jobs or whatever it is, but I've stayed there because I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things, and it's been good for me, but also for the company.
This is Al Lewis. I'd like to chime in on this, and there's two things that stick out for me. I think you guys have done a wonderful job of covering the waterfront, but there's two I think traits that kind of stand out for me. One is resilience. I think that two words: resilience and humility. Humility meaning being able to say, I don't know, I need help. That's so important in the workplace. When you talk about building those relationships, when you have those relationships, it becomes easier to say, I need help. But resilience, because of the change that's going to happen, you need to be okay with having to learn and facing a learning curve. We live in a microwave society where we got to get it right now. Guess what? Sometimes we can't get it right now. Sometimes it might take a couple months. Sometimes it takes falling down on your face. Being okay to fail, and hopefully you're in a safe environment where you're allowed to fail, because that's where a lot of learning takes place. So a couple things that came to mind as you were talking about those soft skills. Those are skills that are needed as we move it today, as we move into the future.
That's such fantastic advice. I heard sort of over and over again, really learn to like people. And I think that we don't always get taught that, especially in coming from the STEM fields. You have to learn to like people. Thank you. That was so powerful. AI, somebody brought this up already. We've discussed the concern about the benefits and the problems of AI. We know manufacturing is already impacted, and accounting, legal areas are already. Where do you see the next wave of impact of AI, and what how if you could put it in perspective for us, is it overblown? I know people said don't think everything is going to be taken over by robots. So if Annalise and Emil, if you could start us off on that.
Sure, I'll start. I guess one question that I'm often asked, I'm in this quantifying world as an economist, how many people work in this industry, and, shifting beans around. But one of the things that's extremely hard, especially in the Seattle area, to quantify is when I am asked how many tech workers are there in the area. Which industry is the tech industry? And the answer that's not really an answer, but really is completely the answer, is every industry is the tech industry. It really is a matter of we've got new ways and technologies that enable us to do things, but what embeds it into an industry is that somebody finds a way, a team of somebody's, a bunch of people that have the humility to learn and the relationship building ability and the creativity to come together and find a way to take this technology, this new way of doing things, and embed it to tackle a problem that is specific to an industry or company. And I think that's really, it shows up everywhere, and it really is just limited by who is able to find a need and is able to creatively think about where that technology might be able to meet the need that an industry or business is already facing. And so I expect to see AI show up in unexpected ways moving forward. And I am not a futurist. I am not going to peg it to one industry or another, because I really I think, as a word of caution, one thing that I acknowledge, and my background is in economics and also a bunch of social sciences, and so I really try to take an approach that acknowledges that all economic activity, all technological activity really is just an overlay and a window through which we are viewing and connecting with other people. It's all it is. And when we it's important to have that equity lens and to be thinking and to really be acknowledging that when when we see displacement of tasks because of technology, that the same people that are affected are not necessarily the same people who will get opportunity from that. And I think that's something that I do not have the answers to, but that we need to also be thinking about as we move forward and navigate this rapidly changing environment.
So, yeah, I think when the question of is it overblown or overly tame, I think it really depends on the industry. I think as we've known, COVID-19 has been a terrible thing from a health perspective, but to force innovation, it's made a lot of companies do things that they probably wouldn't have done as quick as they've done, right? And a lot of that is around automation and AI. So, if you think about the different industries, the ones that have lower wage jobs that are easily automated are the ones that are at risk right now. And we're seeing that a lot of that stuff is accelerated over the last year. So, for the people that are impacted, it's not overblown, right? And if you're thinking about folks that are working in those warehouses, I mean, there's all kinds of videos on YouTube about, these automated robots that are driving around these warehouses, picking everything up, packing it, and shipping it, right? So those are jobs right there you're just seeing. So it is difficult, but the other thing is if you look at overall like AI-driven conversations and automation for something like chatbots, right? That's greatly reduced the need for customer service and sales reps, right? And I think those are things that we've kind of seen over the years. But as things, as you look at other industries, Jennifer was talking about all of the medical stuff. I'm pretty sure most people are going to want to talk to their doctor either through Zoom or in person versus Googling WebMD and trying to figure it out themselves. So there's certain areas like healthcare where I think you're going to see it okay. And the automation is probably going to help with safety and efficiency, but it might not affect the job so much. I don't know. When I think about this, though, I think this is something we've dealt with over the last several hundred years, right? This is nothing new. And the example I always think about is, when's the last time you went into a bank to withdraw money, right? I mean, we have ATM machines. What does the A stand for? Automated, right? It's an automated teller machine. And the fact is, there's still banks, there's still branches on every corner, there's still people there. They're doing higher value work, right? They're probably not, handing out cash as much. The ATM is doing that, but they're doing other things. So it's really difficult to look at that. The other thing you have to balance, and I know that the same people, like you said, that are going to do this higher work may not be the people displaced, but it is not just a net loss, right? There's people that have to build the technology, that have to build the robots and the automation and all this other stuff. So there is a path there for people to actually learn and grow and get other things out there. It is really interesting when you think about it overall. I think there's fears that we've had. I can imagine when the first cars came out and people that were selling, buggy whips and, horse saddles were probably a little worried too. I think it gets back to this question of flexibility and understanding, where can you learn new skills and where can you grow? But it's not as simple as saying they're going to take over all the jobs and they're all going to be gone. So.
This is Jennifer. I'd like to just make a comment with a kind of a healthcare lens for a minute in AI. And, some of the predictive work we're able to do now in healthcare is actually, I think it might be startling to some. We can tell with fairly good accuracy now who might be coming to an emergency room of ours within 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, or who has the highest risk of hospitalization, and which workers or employees might be prone to injury and that type of thing. So if you think about it from how do we take our healthcare resources or other resources and actually do outreach and intervene and preempt some of those things happening, I think in the healthcare world, we're going to be reaching a really different place than we have been, which is a pretty reactive, illness-based model, and being a little bit more of a proactive and being able to outreach and intervene where people are. I know some people get distressed by that, like, all this stuff about me and this is my personal health, which which I get too. But I think when you use these things for a force of good and not a force of evil, as I say, there's a lot of opportunity in healthcare and moving things upstream using some of those AI, machine learning, predictive modeling, different types of approaches to what data we do have about people in our electronic healthcare records.
Thank you. I've got 2 more questions, but I think I can maybe post them both. You've already answered a little bit of the 4th question. You know, we're a higher education institution. We talk about this rapid pace of change. We're not known for rapid change in higher ed. What role do you see higher ed playing, and how will it be different? And the last question we had was for students asking, how do I prepare for having a lot of changes in my job and career? And some of you have already addressed that, but please feel free to add. So Al, you want to start us off, and Annalise, if you want to start us off on the higher ed piece.
Okay, I knew you were going to come to me on this one, Geeta. You know, what's interesting about this question is that when you think about higher ed is a very, very broad industry. We've got every college is very different, different missions, different focuses. So the answer I'm going to give is going to be a broad one. So a lot of it depends on the college and your mission, your community, as to what your focus will be. In this community, I see Bellevue Colleges as a convener. And what that means is we are the conduit between K-12 and work, you know, or K-12 and transfer. And so what I see happening in higher ed and similar schools like ours across the country is greater partnerships with business and industry in terms of being able to communicate having a line of communication where we are producing graduates that are aligned with the skills that equipped with the skills aligned with the workforce. One of the ways that we do that is we have advisory councils for all of our professional technical programs. And those folks really, really inform us as to what's going on in the workplace. No, we don't always turn on a dime, but I think that's changing. I think that we are starting to look at, first of all, there's a real specter called competition now. You know, everybody's competing for the learning dollar. And so with that in mind, we have to think about ways that we can move up or expedite changing our curriculum to match what's going on in the marketplace. So I think that there's going to be a role for higher education always in America, but I think the role of each college is going to be different based on the region that they're located in. Because once again, 70% of jobs by 2027, according to Georgetown's workforce department says, are going to need at least some post-secondary education. So the need for college is going to be there. The question is it a 4-year degree? Is it a 2-year degree? Is it a certificate? Is it someone coming back thinking I need to go into a new career? What courses, what certificate do I need to take in order to translate into a new career? So I think the role of community college, or actually the role of colleges, will get bigger as we move into the future. Because if you're going to do 17 jobs, well, there's going to be a time where you're going to have to come back and learn something new in order to make it happen. Or you're going to need a certificate or a certification to validate what it is you know. Thank you.
Yeah, you hit all the points I was going to make and more, but I'm going to just go to the second part of the question, which was looking at, the advice to students and kind of how to explore that. And one, I guess this just comes from my experience in college and also in life. When you're sitting around the table in the workplace and meeting with other people, what you're generally doing is you're all looking at a specific problem that you're trying to solve, and you're going to have different perspectives on that. And when you're looking at what is it that I would want to, I guess I'll put on my mom hat for a minute too. It's not necessarily what job do I want to have. I say my mom hat because my kids are right back here on the other side of the wall doing online learning. But it's not so much about what job do I want to have, but what do I want to accomplish? What problem do I want to solve? And I really think that it's good to take that problem and look at it from multiple angles. So, you know, if you've got an interest that you find in the economics of housing, take a look at planning, take a look at the social aspects of housing, take a look at different courses that kind of surround that topic that you're interested in from different angles. And that's going to kind of help to foster some of the curiosity, but also understand different perspectives. That's going to help in education, but also in terms of where you end up being able to have that active conversation. And that gets back to the relationship building and the understanding different perspectives that ultimately you're going to be trying to solve problems. You don't necessarily know what those problems are, but you need to be in conversation with other people who are also trying to solve similar problems.
This is Jennifer. I was just going to kind of tag on to that. The perspective of interdisciplinary learning, I think, is a little bit where you were going, and that I can't emphasize that enough. That, you know, I think in nursing we have our nursing process and we do things a specific way, but I think, you know, when we're training maybe with pharmacists and we're training with business majors and we're training with people who have an environmental perspective and many other things, I think that is going to be the power of higher education, is bringing, as Annalise said, those differing perspectives together to create a worker that is able to think broadly, have that systems thinking that I was referring to earlier, and approach problems and challenges with multiple different lenses and perspectives. So really well said, Annalise.
I think this is Emil. I would just add on the advice to the students. You know, the way I look at it is, you know, disrupt yourself, right? I think when I think about it, it's not saying, you know, change companies every few years, but look at different roles, look at different teams, find mentors that are not in your area. You know, anything that's going to challenge your status quo. When I first started working there 15 years ago, I was a project manager, and you know, I progressively would pick up larger and larger pieces of work to the point that I was working on these kind of cross company initiatives that were massive. And each time I got a larger project, it was in an area that I may not have been familiar with. And you've got kind of the anxiety and a little bit of, you know, feeling in your gut that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this. But the thing is, nobody ever grows by doing the same thing every day, right? You have to disrupt yourself. And, you know, that gave me the opportunity to meet with people in, you know, finance and legal and tax and all these groups that I may not have met if I was just, you know, staying doing the same thing I was doing. And then that actually allowed me to grow as a leader. And, you know, the next step was, well, we want you to manage people. And once again, you have that weird kind of feeling in your gut and you're anxious and say, I don't think I want to do that. Well, you know, fast forward and I've got, like I said, teams in 9 different offices all over the world. And it's constantly doing something different. And, you know, I've stayed at the same company for a long time, but I've worked in a lot of different areas. And a lot of times I felt like, you know what, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to do a good job here, but I need to learn. I need to try something new. And, you know, that to me is what actually helps you get better. And that will give you the skills and the different things. And, you know, you're going to fail. We all do. And that's where you learn. You learn probably more from failing than from other things. So for me, get out of that comfort zone, you know, volunteer for different things, ask if you can go work in this different team, but you really want to get comfortable with, you know, knowing that you can get dropped into a new space and you can figure it out and probably be successful. And that gets back to, you know, everything people talked about, being flexible, the learning, all of that piece of it. But to me, it's, you know, disrupting what you're doing on a recurring basis is really critical.
Going to throw in one last thought here from what Emil was was sharing. Many of you are going to be out applying for jobs and doing interviews, and part of every interview is they're going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? First of all, always have questions. That's number one. And a really good question to have is what is your growth and development programs for your employees? You know, what does mobility within this organization look like, and do you have formal programs around helping people build skills and develop themselves, and, as Emil says, see the entire operation of the organization? And A, they'll be impressed. That's a good question. And B, we're going to be coming out of this pandemic, and for folks that have got skills like everyone coming out of a Bellevue College program, this is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter as a labor market. We've got crazy numbers right now, but every major recession and tragedy that we've seen in American history has been followed by, double-digit growth in the employment rate, to say nothing of the stock market, but just talking about employment. So you're going to have a moment here in the next few years, I predict, that it's going to be a seller's market, meaning those that are there selling their labor. So, make choices about where you work based upon what Emil's talking about in terms of the opportunities for growth.
Great. Any sort of concluding thoughts that you would like to share with us? Because or if we have questions, Michael?
Well, I think we wanted to conclude with this idea of advice for students, but we had a particular one, and this is a common path we see here at the college. We have a question from the audience: does the advice look any different for mid-career career changers who are maybe here at the college looking to get a new skill set and branch out to a new career path, maybe in something like digital marketing or something else? So.
Yeah, this is Jennifer. I'd jump in and say, actually, no. I'd say a lot of people that are going into healthcare, nursing, and other things right now, we're seeing many second career folks. And actually, that is a huge advantage, that life experience and some of the development of the skills we talked about earlier. So I don't look at it much differently, no matter where you are in your career. The skills that have been talked about today and the attributes we talked about today, I think, remain important.
This is Al Lewis. As I think about a takeaway, I think of this phrase: you are responsible for your career. You are responsible for your career. And I say that to say this: when you go to work for a company, that company wants something from you. What do you want from that company? You need to ask yourself, what do you want from that company? From a development perspective, from a salary perspective, from a career growth perspective. And you need to make sure you understand what you want from that organization. Because one of the reasons that people change jobs is because they don't experience the growth they're looking for at a particular job, and they make a decision to leave. But there are a lot of people, and I would say people that sometimes are older, who stay with a job because that's what they've been doing for a long time. They've been used to it. They're okay with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, if the job is no longer fulfilling your needs professionally, financially, then you need to ask yourself, what's my next step? Is there something else I can do at this organization? To what Emil talked about, networking and finding other challenging things. But sometimes you may have to leave that organization. You may have to leave the area. And it goes back to the life skills of being flexible, having good social skills. So the skills that we talk about, that we've been talking about, apply in almost every situation when you talk about your professional career. And I will leave with this one last thing. And this is something I learned being a first generation college student, playing football, basketball in high school. I graduated from high school with the appropriate GPA, but I could have done much better. And I didn't have a lot of confidence going into the college. But I recognized one day when one of my guys that always talked in class, I thought he was so much smarter than me. And then when we asked us that, when we compared notes on our test, I had an A and he had a D. And I was somehow measuring myself as not being able to measure up. And from that point on, I learned something that I tell everybody. I only learned two things in college, and I'm still in college right now. One, that I can learn, and that's important, that I can learn. And number two, that there's always more to learn. Thank you.
What a great thought to end on, that I can learn and there's always more to learn. And I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank Michael and Kimberly and Kristen for putting this whole thing together, and the whole team at the Center for Career Connections and RISE. So thank you all and have a great evening.
I want to add my thanks. This is a great message for current college students and recent graduates here. Great stuff. Thank you for joining us here today, and we hope that you'll be able to come back in 2 weeks and join us for Superpowers in STEM, and a panel discussion on women of color in STEM fields. Thanks again, everybody, for coming.